You don't fail to connect with powerful people because you're not smart enough. You fail because you're playing the wrong role. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never hear. The moment you walk into a room with power, the hierarchy is already decided. Before you speak, before you smile, before you shake a hand, someone is being evaluated as a tool, and someone as a liability. And almost everyone unknowingly volunteers to be neither. They become invisible. You've felt this. You're present, but ignored. You contribute, but nothing sticks. You work harder, explain more clearly, show more respect, and somehow sink lower. This isn't bad luck. It's not unfairness. It's structure. Power does not respond to sincerity. Power responds to leverage. That sentence alone can change your life or ruin it, depending on how deeply you understand it. Most people approach influence the way children approach adults, hoping to be liked, hoping to be chosen, hoping to be seen as good. But power doesn't select for goodness. It selects for usefulness, protection, and advantage. And here's where it gets dangerous. The traits you were taught to value, honesty, transparency, enthusiasm, competence, are often the very traits that get you locked out of elite circles, because they expose your intentions, and exposed intentions are easy to control. This is where Machiavelli enters the conversation, not as a villain, but as a realist. The Machiavelli worldview doesn't ask what should work. It asks what actually works when humans are driven by fear, ego, and self-interest. And when it comes to connection, Machiavelli saw something most people miss. Powerful individuals are not looking for friends. They are looking for extensions of themselves, mirrors that reinforce their identity, shields that absorb risk, tools that increase their reach. If you walk into that environment trying to be impressive, you've already lost. If you walk in trying to be authentic, you've misunderstood the game. Because authenticity is a luxury reserved for those who already have power. For everyone else, connection is not expression, it is strategy. This is the first mental barrier you must break if you want access to influence, the belief that power rewards merit. It doesn't. It rewards alignment. And alignment requires something uncomfortable: restraint. The most dangerous mistake ambitious people make is believing visibility equals value. They talk too much, explain too fast, show too much competence too early. They shine before they are safe. Machiavelli warned that power fears what it cannot control, and nothing is more threatening than a capable person who hasn't yet been categorized. So before we even discuss laws, tactics, or psychology, you need to understand this foundational shift. Your goal is not to be noticed. Your goal is to be needed without being understood. That paradox is the gate. In the next part, we'll dismantle the first and most misunderstood rule, the law that determines whether you're invited inside the walls or quietly eliminated before you ever matter. The fastest way to lose power is to reveal how much you want it. This is where most people self-destruct without realizing it. They finally get proximity to influence, one meeting, one conversation, one invitation, and their instincts betray them. They lean forward, they overshare, they pitch too soon. Their voice carries urgency, their eyes ask for approval, and the powerful person across from them feels it instantly, not consciously, instinctively. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The moment your desire becomes visible, you surrender control. Because desire creates predictability, and predictability creates leverage for the other side. This brings us to Law 2, conceal why, our intentions. A predictable person is a manageable person. A manageable person is never powerful. Think about it. If someone knows what you want, they can decide when to give it to you, or whether to give it at all. If they know you want money, they can delay you. If they know you want access, they can gatekeep you. If they know you want validation, they can drip-feed it to keep you dependent. This is why powerful people are instinctively repelled by eagerness. Eagerness feels like hunger, and hunger signals weakness. Most people misunderstand this law and assume it means lying. It doesn't. Lying creates inconsistencies. Inconsistencies create distrust. Machiavelli was far more precise than that. Concealment is not deception. Concealment is selective visibility. You don't hide who you are. You hide where you're going. When you enter a powerful environment, your job is not to announce your ambition. It's to obscure it, to become unreadable, to create curiosity without revealing direction. This is why the most effective connectors talk around business, not about it. They discuss art, philosophy, history, obsessions, habits, taste. They let the interaction feel human while remaining strategically hollow. Why does this work? Because power is constantly scanning for threat vectors. Someone who wants something specific is a threat. Someone whose intentions are unclear is a question mark, and question marks hold attention. Machiavelli observed that uncertainty destabilizes hierarchy. When someone cannot categorize you, they hesitate, and hesitation creates space. This is where the dynamic subtly flips. Instead of you seeking approval, they begin assessing you. Instead of you pitching value, they begin probing for it. Instead of you chasing relevance, they start wondering where you fit. That curiosity is your first real leverage. But there is a deeper layer most people miss. When you conceal your intentions, you force the powerful person to project onto you. They fill the silence with assumptions. They imagine potential uses. They see reflections of their own needs. You become a mirror, and mirrors are valuable. This is why silence is often more powerful than speech, why restraint outperforms enthusiasm, why the person who leaves questions unanswered is remembered longer than the one who explains everything. However, this law has a hidden danger. If you conceal too well, you become forgettable. If you reveal too much, you become exploitable. The balance is razor thin. And Machiavelli warned that only those who master timing survive this stage. Reveal nothing too early. Reveal something only when it increases dependency. Because concealment is not permanent. It's preparatory. And this leads to the most misunderstood truth about power. You do not enter elite circles by demanding value. You enter by slowly becoming indispensable before anyone realizes it's happening. In the next part, we'll expose the law that determines whether you're seen as a harmless accessory or a necessary fixture. The law that transforms presence into permanence. Power doesn't fear weakness. It fears replacement. This is where ambitious people make a fatal miscalculation. They believe value comes from being impressive, from demonstrating talent, from proving intelligence. But in environments shaped by Machiavelli logic, impressiveness is noise. What power actually seeks is irreplaceability. This brings us to the law that quietly decides who stays and who disappears. Law 3. Make yourself indispensable, not admired, not liked, not respected, needed. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Powerful people do not form attachments easily. They form dependencies, and dependencies are never built through grand gestures. They are built through small, invisible functions that quietly become essential. Most people try to add value loudly. They announce what they can do. They volunteer ideas. They solve problems publicly. They want credit. And every time they do, they train power to see them as optional, because anything that is visible can be replaced. Machiavelli understood that the safest position near power is not the spotlight. It's the infrastructure, the unseen system that makes everything work, the mechanism that, if removed, creates friction. Think about it. The most secure people in powerful environments are rarely the most famous. They are the ones who know where information flows, who understands timing, who controls access, who anticipates needs before they are verbalized. They don't ask, "How can I help?" They ask, "What breaks if I disappear?" This is the shift. Indispensability begins with observation, not action. You watch how decisions are made, who influences whom, where delays occur, what problems keep reappearing, what tasks powerful people hate doing but rely on. Those are leverage points. And here's the key Machiavellian insight. The more quietly you solve a problem, the more ownership you gain over it. Loud solutions invite competition. Quiet solutions create dependency. You don't announce your contribution. You normalize it. At first, it's small. You handle a detail. You smooth a friction point. You remember something important that others forget. You make their world slightly easier without drawing attention to yourself. Then something subtle happens. They begin to rely on you, not because you demanded relevance, but because removing you would now create inconvenience. And inconvenience is the one thing power will always avoid. This is why Machiavelli warned against rushing influence. If you ascend too quickly, you attract rivals. If you move slowly and invisibly, you become embedded. But there's a trap here. Many people mistake indispensability for overworking. They say yes to everything. They become available at all times. They confuse usefulness with servitude. That is not power. That is exhaustion. True indispensability is elective. You control access to your value. You are reliable, but not infinite. Helpful, but not desperate. Present, but not always available. Scarcity enhances dependence. The moment power senses that losing you would create disruption, but keeping you costs little, you've crossed a critical threshold. You are no longer evaluated. You are protected. And protection is the currency of elite circles. However, there's a darker truth Machiavelli emphasized. Once you become indispensable, expectations rise. Dependency creates resentment. Power begins to fear how much it needs you, which means indispensability is not the final stage. It is the most dangerous one. Because the moment someone feels they cannot function without you, they also begin imagining what happens if you turn against them. And this brings us to the next law, the law that determines whether indispensability leads to influence or elimination. The moment you become valuable, you become a potential threat. This is the paradox Machiavelli warned about more than any other. Power wants assets, but it never fully trusts them, especially the ones it depends on. This is why so many capable people rise quickly and then vanish. They misunderstand the next law. Law 4. Make others feel secure in your presence. Indispensability gets you inside the walls. Security keeps you alive inside them. Power does not fear incompetence. It fears instability. It fears the unknown. And once you are embedded, the question silently shifts from "what do you add" to "what could you take?" This is where ambitious people expose themselves. They start signaling independence too early. They hint at alternative options. They display confidence without constraint. They let others see they could survive, or thrive, without the relationship. And the powerful person feels a flicker of danger. Machiavelli understood that power prefers loyal weakness over capable unpredictability. Not because it dislikes strength, but because it dislikes risk. So the goal at this stage is not to grow louder, it is to grow reassuring. You must neutralize the fear your competence creates. This does not mean diminishing your value, it means anchoring it. You subtly frame your success as intertwined with theirs. You emphasize alignment, shared outcomes, mutual benefit. You let them believe, not falsely but selectively, that your rise depends on their stability. This is psychological insulation, because power protects what it believes is attached to it. The most effective operators do this without words. They mirror language. They echo priorities. They reinforce narratives that place the powerful person at the center of success. They make themselves appear as extensions, not alternatives. This is why Machiavelli advised appearing loyal, even when ambition burns quietly underneath. But loyalty here is not obedience. It is predictability of allegiance. You never surprise power, you never challenge it publicly, you never force it to defend itself. You allow it to feel unthreatened. And here's the crucial detail most people miss. Security is emotional, not logical. You can be indispensable and still be eliminated if someone feels uneasy around you. Feelings outrank facts in hierarchies. Always have. This is why restraint becomes more important the higher you rise. The stronger you become, the softer your edges must appear. And yet, this law hides a dangerous cliff. If you make others too comfortable, you become background. You fade into furniture. You lose leverage. So how do you remain essential without triggering fear? Machiavelli's answer was elegant. Never seek the spotlight, but always control the outcome. You let others take credit. You let them feel powerful. You let them believe they are steering, while quietly shaping the path. This creates a strange illusion. They feel dominant, yet dependent. Secure, yet unwilling to lose you. That balance is rare, and those who achieve it become untouchable. But it comes at a cost. Because once you master this, you begin to notice something unsettling. Power does not reward loyalty the way you expect. It rewards usefulness until usefulness becomes inconvenient, which means no position is permanent. And this leads us to the law that separates survivors from casualties, the law that teaches when to attach and when to disappear. Power remembers one thing above all else: who controlled the exit. Most people think betrayal is the greatest sin in elite circles. Machiavelli knew better. The real unforgivable act is making power feel abandoned or exposed. This brings us to the law that decides whether your rise ends in survival or in erasure. Law 5. Never trap yourself in one source of power. Here's the danger of success. The more you integrate, the harder it becomes to leave. Dependency works both ways, and the moment power senses you have no alternative, the balance quietly shifts against you. Why? Because leverage only exists when separation is possible. Machiavelli observed that those who bind themselves completely to one patron eventually become disposable, not because they fail, but because they become predictable. And predictability invites replacement. This is where intelligent operators think several moves ahead. They never sever loyalty. They diversify relevance. You don't broadcast options. You don't threaten departure. You don't hint at escape. That triggers defensive instincts. Instead, you build parallel value streams quietly, relationships that don't overlap, skills that aren't visible, influence that isn't obvious. So if one door closes, you do not panic. You pivot. This creates an invisible power shift, because the most dangerous person in any hierarchy is not the rebel. It's the one who can leave without consequences. Power senses this, even if it can't articulate it. It becomes more cautious, more respectful, more inclined to negotiate rather than dominate. But here's the trap most fall into. They confuse optionality with disloyalty. They start signaling independence. They overcorrect, and suddenly power feels threatened again. Machiavelli was precise. Never appear to be preparing an exit. Optionality must be silent. Your connections should look stable. Your commitment should appear intact. Your presence should feel reliable. The strength lies in what you don't reveal. This is why true power operators rarely burn bridges. They fade. They reposition. They let circumstances, not confrontation, create distance. And when they leave, they do so cleanly, with gratitude, with continuity, with their reputation intact. Because reputation is the shadow that follows you into the next circle. Lose it once, and every future connection weakens. But there's a deeper psychological layer here. When power knows you could leave, but believes you won't, you become paradoxically safer and more dangerous at the same time. Safe enough to keep. Dangerous enough to respect. This is the equilibrium Machiavelli aimed for. However, maintaining this balance requires something most people avoid: emotional detachment. You cannot cling, you cannot resent, you cannot personalize hierarchy, because the moment you emotionally depend on access, you lose leverage. And this brings us to the most difficult law of all, the law that forces you to confront the illusion of belonging. The law that reveals why the most powerful connectors are often the least emotionally invested. The greatest illusion power offers is belonging. This is where even disciplined minds falter. You spend enough time near influence and something subtle happens. You're invited more often. Your presence is expected. Your input is considered. And slowly, dangerously, you begin to feel like you are inside. Machiavelli warned that this feeling is a trap. Because the moment you believe you belong, you stop positioning, you stop observing, you stop protecting your leverage. This brings us to Law 6. Never confuse access with power. Access feels intoxicating. It mimics authority. It flatters the ego. It creates the illusion that you've arrived. But access can be revoked instantly, without explanation, without apology. Power cannot. Those who confuse the two begin to speak too freely. They share opinions. They relax boundaries. They forget who is watching. And hierarchies never stop watching. The Machiavelli mindset teaches something uncomfortable. You are never in. You are always temporarily allowed. The people who survive elite environments understand this at a visceral level. They remain composed, guarded, a step removed, even while smiling, even while contributing. They never forget the asymmetry. This emotional distance is not coldness, it is clarity. Because power shifts constantly. Alliances realign, favor expires. And when the tide turns, those who believed in belonging are the first casualties. Machiavelli observed that elites often eliminate not threats, but intimates. The closer someone gets emotionally, the more dangerous their potential disillusionment becomes. This is why emotional neutrality is protective. You can be warm without being attached, present without being invested, loyal without being dependent. This detachment allows you to see patterns others miss. You notice shifts in tone, changes in access, subtle exclusions, signals that something is moving beneath the surface. And because you are not emotionally anchored, you can respond, rather than react. Most people don't fall because they lack skill. They fall because they misread the moment. They assume yesterday's favor guarantees tomorrow's security. It doesn't. Power respects those who understand its impermanence. But here's the hardest part. To maintain this distance, you must kill a deep human instinct, the desire to be accepted, to be chosen, to be part of the inner circle. Machiavelli considered this instinct exploitable, and power exploits it relentlessly. The ones who resist it gain something rare, perspective, and with perspective comes timing. Which brings us to the final law, the one Machiavelli never wrote explicitly but implied everywhere. the law that decides when to step forward and when to vanish. Because in power dynamics, the most important move is often the one you don't make. Power never announces its turning point. It reveals it, quietly. This is the final law, the one that determines whether everything you've built compounds or collapses. Law 7. Master the art of strategic absence. Machiavelli understood something deeply unsettling. Presence creates familiarity, and familiarity erodes leverage. The more predictable your availability, the less valuable your presence becomes. This is where most people fail at the peak. They finally gain access, trust, and relevance, and then they stay too long. They linger. They over-participate. They mistake consistency for security. And slowly, invisibly, their value depreciates. Power does not reward permanence. It rewards contrast. Strategic absence is not withdrawal. It is controlled scarcity. You step back just enough to be missed, but never enough to be forgotten. This is how influence refreshes itself. When you are always present, your contribution blends into the background. When you disappear briefly, your absence creates friction. Questions arise. Gaps are noticed. Dependency becomes visible. Machiavelli believed that the most powerful figures knew when to withdraw, not out of fear, but out of timing. They allowed others to feel the weight of their absence. This is not ego. It is calibration. You don't announce your retreat. You don't dramatize distance. You let circumstances do the speaking. And when you return, you do so deliberately, bringing clarity, resolution, or stability. You re-enter as a solution, not a participant. This reinforces your role, because power remembers who restores order. But here is the final brutal truth that ties all 7 laws together. You do not connect with powerful people by chasing them. You connect by removing uncertainty from their world, while remaining slightly uncertain yourself. That is the paradox. You become reliable, but not predictable. Valuable, but not exposed. Close, but never consumed. Machiavelli never promised morality. He promised effectiveness. And effectiveness requires discipline, especially over your own ego. If there is one illusion you must destroy, it is this: that power relationships are emotional. They are not. They are psychological systems governed by fear, advantage, and continuity. Once you see this, something changes permanently. You stop feeling inferior. You stop over-explaining. You stop trying to be chosen. You begin to observe, to position, to move deliberately. Powerful people stop feeling intimidating and start feeling readable. They are no longer gods. They are systems. And systems can be navigated. But be warned. Once you understand these laws, you cannot unsee them. You will notice the strings, the silence, the subtle tests, the shifting hierarchies in every room. You will realize that most people are not rejected by power. They disqualify themselves by misunderstanding it. If you apply these principles, you will not become ruthless. You will become precise. And precision is the true currency of influence. This is the moment where you choose. Do you continue playing the game you were taught, or the one that actually exists?